Weekly Bible Reading by Messiaheart. Messianic Jewish readings from the Parashah, which is the Torah, Haftorah, which is the Prophets, and the Brit Hadashah, which is the New Testament. Saturday, August 17, 2024. Today's Parashah reading is Vaetchanan, which means, and I pleaded. It is Deuteronomy chapter 3 verse 23 through chapter 7 verse 11. The Haftorah reading is Isaiah chapter 40 verses 1 through 26. The Brit Hadashah readings are Matthew chapter 23 verses 31 through 39 and Mark chapter 12 verses 28 through 34. The Parashah reading. This week's Parashah reading is Deuteronomy chapter 3 verse 23 through chapter 7 verse 11. The Amplified Bible. Deuteronomy chapter 3 starting with verse 23. Then I pleaded with the Lord at that time for his favor, saying, O Lord God, you have only begun to show your servant your greatness and your mighty hand. For what God is there in heaven or on earth that can do such works and mighty acts, miracles, as yours? I pray, let me go over and see the good land that is beyond the Jordan, that good hill country with Hermon and Lebanon. But the Lord was angry with me because of you, and your rebellion at Meribah, and would not listen to me. And the Lord said to me, Enough, speak to me no longer about this matter. Go up to the top of Mount Pisgah and raise your eyes toward the west and north and south and east, and see it with your eyes, for you shall not cross this Jordan. But command Joshua and encourage and strengthen him, for he shall go across and lead this people, and he will give them the land which you see as an inheritance. So we stayed in the valley opposite Beth Peor. Deuteronomy chapter 4. Now, O Israel, listen and pay attention to the statutes and the judgments, God's legal decisions, which I am teaching you to do, so that you may live and go in and take possession of the land which the Lord, the God of your fathers, is giving you. You shall not add to the word which I am commanding you, nor take away from it, so that you may keep the commandments of the Lord your God which I am commanding you. Your eyes have seen what the Lord did at Baal Peor. For all the men who followed and participated in the worship of Baal of Peor, the Lord your God destroyed them from among you. But you who held tightly to the Lord your God are alive today, every one of you. Look, I have taught you statutes and judgments just as the Lord my God has commanded me, so that you may do them in the land which you are entering to possess. So keep and do them, for that is your wisdom and your understanding in the sight of the peoples who will hear all these statutes and say, Surely this great nation is a wise and understanding people. For what great nation is there that has a God so near to it as the Lord our God is to us, whenever we call on him? Or what great nation has statutes and judgments so righteous, upright, just, as this whole law which I am placing before you today? Only pay attention and watch yourselves closely, so that you do not forget the things which your eyes have seen, and they do not depart from your heart all the days of your life. Make them known to your children and your grandchildren, impressing these things on their mind and penetrating their heart with these truths. Especially the day you stood before the Lord your God at Horeb, Mount Sinai, when the Lord said to me, Assemble the people to me and I will let them hear my words, so that they may learn to fear me, with awe-filled reverence and profound respect, all the days they live on the land, and so that they may teach their children. You approached and stood at the foot of the mountain, and the mountain burned with fire to the very heart of the heavens. Darkness, cloud, and thick gloom. Then the Lord spoke to you from the midst of the fire. You heard the sound of the words, but you saw no form. There was only a voice. So he declared to you his covenant which he commanded you to follow, the 10 Commandments, and he wrote them on 2 tablets of stone. The Lord commanded me at that time to teach you the statutes and judgments, so that you might do them in the land which you are going over to possess. So pay attention and watch yourselves carefully, for you did not see any form of God on the day the Lord spoke to you at Horeb from the midst of the fire, so that you do not act corruptly and make for yourselves a carved or sculpted image, to worship in the form of any figure, the likeness of male or female, the likeness of any animal that is on the earth, or of any winged bird that flies in the sky, the likeness of anything that crawls on the ground, or of any fish that is in the waters, beneath the earth. And beware that you do not raise your eyes toward heaven and see the sun and the moon and the stars, all the host of heaven, and let yourselves be led astray and worship them and serve them, mere created bodies, which the Lord your God has allotted to serve and benefit all the peoples under the whole heaven. But the Lord has taken you and brought you out of the iron smelting furnace, out of Egypt, to be a people for his own possession, as you are this day. Now the Lord was angry with me, at the waters of Meribah, because of you, and he swore an oath, that I would not cross the Jordan, and that I would not enter the good land which the Lord your God is giving you as an inheritance. For I am going to die in this land, I am not going to cross the Jordan, but you shall cross over and take possession of this good land. So be on your guard and watch yourselves, so that you do not forget the covenant of the Lord your God which he has made with you, and make for yourselves a carved or sculpted image in the form of anything which the Lord your God has forbidden you. For the Lord your God is a consuming fire. He is a jealous, impassioned God, demanding what is rightfully and uniquely his. When you become the father of children and grandchildren and have grown old in the land, then if you corrupt yourselves by making a carved or sculpted image in the form of anything, for the purpose of worship, and do evil things in the sight of the Lord your God, provoking him to anger, I call heaven and earth as witnesses against you today, that you will soon utterly perish from the land which you are crossing the Jordan to possess. You shall not live long on it, but will be utterly destroyed. The Lord will scatter and disperse you among the peoples, pagan nations, and you will be left few in number among the nations where the Lord drives you. And there you will serve false and foreign gods, the work of human hands, lifeless images of wood and stone, which neither see nor hear nor eat nor smell, the offerings of food given to them. But from there you will seek the Lord your God, and you will find him if you search for him with all your heart and all your soul. When you are in distress and tribulation and all these things come on you, in the latter days you will return to the Lord your God and listen to his voice. For the Lord your God is a merciful and compassionate God. He will not fail you, nor destroy you, nor forget the covenant with your fathers which he swore to them. Indeed, ask now about the days that are past, those days which were before you, since the day that God created man on the earth, and ask from one end of the heavens to the other. Has anything been done like this great thing, or has anything been heard like it? Did any people ever hear the voice of God speaking out of the midst of the fire, as you heard, and still live? Or has any man-made God ever tried to go and take for himself a nation from within another nation by trials, by signs and wonders and by war and by a mighty hand and by an outstretched arm and by great terrors, as the Lord your God did for you in Egypt before your very eyes? It was shown to you so that you might have personal knowledge and comprehend that the Lord is God. There is no other besides him. Out of the heavens he let you hear his voice to discipline and admonish you. And on earth he let you see his great fire, and you heard his words from the midst of the fire. And because he loved your fathers, he chose their descendants who followed them, and brought you from Egypt with his presence, with his great and awesome power, dispossessing and driving out from before you nations that were greater and mightier than you, to bring you in, to give you their land as an inheritance, as it is this day. Therefore know and understand today, and take it to your heart, that the Lord is God in the heavens above and on the earth below. There is no other. So you shall keep his statutes and his commandments which I am commanding you today, so that it may go well with you and with your children after you, and so that you may live long on the land which the Lord your God is giving you for all time. Then Moses set apart 3 cities of refuge beyond the Jordan toward the rising of the sun eastward, so that someone who committed manslaughter could flee there, that is, a person who killed his neighbor unintentionally and without previously having hostility toward him, and that by escaping to one of these cities he might claim the right of asylum and save his life. Bezer in the wilderness on the plateau for the Reubenites, and Ramoth in Gilead for the Gadites, and Golan in Bashan for the Manassites. This is the law which Moses placed before the sons of Israel. These are the testimonies, legal provisions, and the statutes and the judgments which Moses spoke to the sons of Israel when they came out of Egypt, beyond the Jordan in the valley opposite Beth-peor, in the land of Sihon king of the Amorites who lived at Heshbon, whom Moses and the sons of Israel defeated when they came out from Egypt. They took possession of his land and the land of Og king of Bashan, the 2 kings of the Amorites who reigned across the Jordan to the east from Aroer, which is on the edge of the valley of the river Arnon, as far as Mount Shaun, that is Hermon, with all the Araba desert lowlands, across the Jordan to the east, even as far as the sea of the Araba, the Dead Sea, at the foot of the slopes of Pisgah. Deuteronomy chapter 5. Then Moses summoned all Israel and said to them, Hear, O Israel, the statutes and judgments, legal decisions, which I am speaking today in your hearing, so that you may learn them and observe them carefully. The Lord our God made a covenant with us at Horeb. The Lord did not make this covenant with our fathers, but with us, all of us who are alive here today. The Lord spoke with you face to face at the mountain from the midst of the fire. I was standing between the Lord and you at that time, to declare to you the word of the Lord. For you were afraid because of the fire and did not go up the mountain. He said, I am the Lord your God who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of slavery. You shall have no other gods before me. You shall not make for yourself an idol as an object to worship, or any likeness, form, manifestation, of what is in heaven above or on the earth beneath or in the water under the earth. You shall not worship them or serve them. For I, the Lord your God, am a jealous, impassioned God, demanding what is rightfully and uniquely mine, visiting, avenging the iniquity, sin, guilt of the fathers on the children. That is, calling the children to account for the sins of their fathers, to the 3rd and the 4th generations of those who hate me, but showing graciousness and loving kindness to thousands of generations, of those who love me and keep my commandments. You shall not take the name of the Lord your God in vain, that is, irreverently, in false affirmations or in ways that impugn the character of God. For the Lord will not hold guiltless nor leave unpunished the one who takes his name in vain, disregarding its reverence and its power. Observe the Sabbath day to keep it holy, set apart, dedicated to God, as the Lord your God commanded you. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but the 7th day is a Sabbath, a day of rest dedicated to the Lord your God. On that day you shall not do any work, you or your son or your daughter or your male servant or your female servant or your ox or your donkey or any of your livestock or the stranger who stays inside your city gates, so that your male servant and your female servant may rest as well as you. You shall remember, with thoughtful concern, that you were a slave in the land of Egypt, and that the Lord your God brought you out of there with a mighty hand and by an outstretched arm. Therefore the Lord your God has commanded you to observe the Sabbath day. Honor, respect, obey, care for your father and your mother, as the Lord your God has commanded you, so that your days on the earth may be prolonged and so that it may go well with you in the land which the Lord your God gives you. You shall not murder. You shall not commit adultery. You shall not steal. You shall not give false testimony, that is, lie, withhold, or manipulate the truth, against your neighbor, any person. You shall not covet, that is, desire and seek to acquire your neighbor's wife, nor desire your neighbor's house, his field, his male servant or his female servant, his ox or his donkey or anything that belongs to your neighbor. The Lord spoke these words with a great voice to all your assembly at the mountain out of the midst of the fire, the cloud, and the thick darkness, and he added no more. He wrote these commandments on 2 tablets of stone and gave them to me. And when you heard the voice from the midst of the darkness, while the mountain was burning with fire, you approached me, all the leaders, heads, of your tribes and your elders. And you said, Behold, the Lord our God has shown us his glory and his greatness, and we have heard his voice from the midst of the fire. We have seen today that God speaks with man, yet he still lives. Now then why should we die? For this great fire will consume us. If we hear the voice of the Lord our God any longer, then we will die. For who is there of all flesh, mankind, who has heard the voice of the living God speaking from the midst of the fire, as we have and lived? You, Moses, go near and listen to everything that the Lord our God says. Then speak to us everything that the Lord our God speaks to you, and we will listen and do it. The Lord heard your words when you spoke to me, and the Lord said to me, I have heard the words of this people which they have spoken to you. They have done well in all that they have spoken. Oh, that they had such a heart in them, that they would fear, and worship me with awe-filled reverence and profound respect, and keep all my commandments always, so that it may go well with them and with their children forever. Go and say to them, Return to your tents. But as for you, stand here by me, and I will tell you all the commandments and the statutes and the judgments which you shall teach them, so that they may obey them in the land which I give them to possess. Therefore you shall pay attention and be careful to do just as the Lord your God has commanded you. You shall not turn aside to the right or to the left, deviating from my commandments. You shall walk, that is, live each and every day in all the ways which the Lord your God has commanded you, so that you may live and so that it may be well with you, and that you may live long in the land which you will possess. Deuteronomy chapter 6. Now this is the command, the statutes and the judgments, precepts, which the Lord your God has commanded me to teach you, so that you might do, follow, obey them in the land which you are crossing over the Jordan to possess, so that you and your son and your grandson may fear and worship the Lord your God with awe-filled reverence and profound respect, to keep and actively do all his statutes and his commandments which I am commanding you, all the days of your life, so that your days may be prolonged. Therefore listen, O Israel, and be careful to do them, that it may go well with you and that you may increase greatly in numbers, as the Lord, the God of your fathers, has promised you, in a land flowing with milk and honey. Hear, O Israel, the Lord is our God. The Lord is one, the only God. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and mind, and with all your soul, and with all your strength, your entire being. These words, which I am commanding you today, shall be written on your heart and mind. You shall teach them diligently to your children, impressing God's precepts on their minds and penetrating their hearts with his truths, and shall speak of them when you sit in your house and when you walk on the road and when you lie down and when you get up. And you shall bind them as a sign on your hand, forearm, and they shall be used as bands, frontals, frontlets, on your forehead. You shall write them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates. Then it shall come about when the Lord your God brings you into the land which he swore, solemnly promised, to give your fathers, to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, to give you, a land with great and splendid cities which you did not build, and houses full of all good things which you did not fill, and hewn, excavated cisterns, wells, which you did not dig out, and vineyards and olive trees which you did not plant, and you eat and are full and satisfied. Then beware that you do not forget the Lord who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of slavery. You shall fear only the Lord your God, and you shall serve him with awe-filled reverence and profound respect, and swear oaths by his name alone. You shall not follow other gods, any of the gods of the peoples who surround you, for the Lord your God who is among you is a jealous, impassioned God, demanding what is rightfully and uniquely his. Otherwise the anger of the Lord your God will be kindled and burn against you, and he will destroy you from the face of the earth. You shall not put the Lord your God to the test, as you tested him at Massah. You shall diligently keep, foremost in your thoughts and actively do, the commandments of the Lord your God, and his testimonies and his statutes which he has commanded you. You shall do what is right and good in the sight of the Lord, so that it may be well with you and that you may go in and possess the good land which the Lord swore to give your fathers, by driving out all your enemies from before you, as the Lord has spoken. When your son asks you in time to come, saying, What is the meaning of the testimonies and statutes and judgments, precepts, which the Lord our God has commanded you? Then you shall say to your son, We were Pharaoh's slaves in Egypt, and the Lord brought us out of Egypt with a mighty hand. Moreover, the Lord showed great and terrible signs and wonders before our eyes against Egypt, Pharaoh and all his household. He brought us out from there in order to bring us in, to give us the land which he had sworn to give our fathers. So the Lord commanded us to do all these statutes, to fear and worship the Lord our God with awe-filled reverence and profound respect, for our good always and so that he might preserve us alive, as it is today. It will be considered righteousness for us, that is, right standing with God, if we are careful to observe all this commandment before the Lord our God, just as he has commanded us. Deuteronomy chapter 7 up to verse 11. When the Lord your God brings you into the land which you are entering to possess, and has cleared away many nations before you, the Hittite and the Girgashite and the Amorite and the Canaanite and the Perizzite and the Hivite and the Jebusite, 7 nations greater and mightier than you, and when the Lord your God gives them over to you and you defeat them, then you shall utterly destroy them. You shall not make a covenant, treaty, with them nor show mercy and compassion to them. You shall not intermarry with them. You shall not give your daughter to his son, nor shall you take his daughter for your son. For they will turn your sons away from following me to serve other gods. Then the anger of the Lord will be kindled and burn against you, and he will quickly destroy you. But this is how you shall deal with them. You shall tear down their altars and smash to pieces their sacred pillars, and cut down their Asherim, symbols of the goddess Asherah, and burn their carved or sculpted images in the fire. For you are a holy people set apart to the Lord your God. The Lord your God has chosen you out of all the peoples on the face of the earth to be a people for his own possession. That is, his very special treasure. The Lord did not love you and choose you because you were greater in number than any of the other peoples, for you were the fewest of all peoples. But because the Lord loves you and is keeping the oath which he swore to your fathers, the Lord has brought you out with a mighty hand and redeemed, bought, you from the house of slavery, from the hand of Pharaoh king of Egypt. Therefore know without any doubt and understand that the Lord your God, he is God, the faithful God, who is keeping his covenant and his steadfast loving kindness to 1,000 generations with those who love him and keep his commandments, but repays those who hate him to their faces by destroying them. He will not hesitate with him who hates him, he will repay him to his face. Therefore you shall keep, follow, obey, the commandment and the statutes and judgments, precepts, which I am commanding you today. The Haftorah reading. This week's Haftorah reading is Isaiah chapter 40 verses 1 through 26 in both the Passion Translation and the Amplified. Isaiah 40 verses 1 through 26. The Passion Translation. Your God says to you, Comfort, comfort my people with gentle, compassionate words. Speak tenderly from the heart to revive those in Jerusalem, and proclaim that their warfare is over. Her debt of sin is paid for, and she will not be treated as guilty. Prophesy to her that she has received from the hand of Yahweh twice as many blessings as all her sins. A thunderous voice cries out in the wilderness. Prepare the way for Yahweh's arrival. Make a highway straight through the desert for our God. Every valley will be raised up, every mountain brought low. The rugged terrain will become level ground and the rough places a plain. Then Yahweh's radiant glory will be unveiled, and all humanity will experience it together. Believe it, for Yahweh has spoken his decree. A voice says, Cry out, and I ask, what should I say? All people are as frail as grass, and their elegance is like a wilting wildflower. The grass withers, the flower fades when the breath of Yahweh blows upon it. The people are just like grass. But even though grass withers and the flower fades, the word of our God stands strong forever. Go up on a high mountain, you joyful messengers of Zion, and lift up your voices with power. You who proclaim joyous news to Jerusalem, shout it out and don't be afraid. Say to the cities of Judah, Here is your God. Look, here comes Lord Yahweh as a victorious warrior. He triumphs with his awesome power. Watch as he brings with him his reward and the spoils of victory to give to his people. He will care for you as a shepherd tends his flock, gathering the weak lambs and taking them in his arms. He carries them close to his heart and gently leads those that have young. Who has measured the waters of the sea in the hollow of his hand and used his handwidth to mark off the heavens? Who knows the exact weight of all the dust of the earth and has weighed all the mountains and hills on his scale? Who fully understands the spirit of Yahweh or is wise enough to counsel him? Whom does he consult to be enlightened? Who teaches him the ways of justice? Who imparts knowledge to him or shows him the true path of wisdom? Even the nations are to him like a drop in a bucket, regarded as nothing more than dust on a scale. He picks up the islands like fine grains of sand. All of Lebanon's trees are not enough firewood for him, nor are all its animals enough for a burnt offering. The nations are nothing in his eyes. He regards them as absolutely nothing. Who even comes close to being compared to God? How could you ever compare God to an idol? A craftsman forms an idol god. Then a goldsmith overlays it with gold and forges its silver chains. The one who is poor and cannot afford silver or gold chooses a tree that will not rot, then seeks a skilled workman to make an idol that will not topple. Don't you realize that God is the creator? Don't you hear the truth? Haven't you been told this from the beginning? Haven't you understood this since he laid a firm foundation for the earth? He sits enthroned high above the circle of the earth. To him the people of earth are like grasshoppers. He stretches out the heavens like a curtain, spreading it open like a tent to live in. He reduces rulers to nothing and makes the elite of the earth as nothing at all. They barely get planted and barely take root in their position of power when the Lord blows on them and they wither away, carried off like straw in the stormy wind. The Holy One asks, Can you find anyone or anything to compare to me? Where is the one equal to me? Lift up your eyes to the sky and see for yourself. Who do you think created the cosmos? He lit every shining star and formed every glowing galaxy, and stationed them all where they belong. He has numbered, counted, and given each one a name. They shine because of God's incredible power and awesome might. Not one fails to appear. Isaiah 40 verses 1 through 26. The Amplified Bible. Comfort, O comfort my people, says your God. Speak tenderly to Jerusalem and call out to her, that her time of compulsory service in warfare is finished, that her wickedness has been taken away, since her punishment is sufficient, that she has received from the Lord's hand double punishment, for all her sins. A voice of one is calling out, Clear the way for the Lord in the wilderness, remove the obstacles, make straight and smooth in the desert a highway for our God. Every valley shall be raised, and every mountain and hill be made low, and let the rough ground become a plain, and the rugged places a broad valley. And the glory and majesty and splendor of the Lord will be revealed, and all humanity shall see it together, for the mouth of the Lord has spoken it. A voice says, "Call out, prophesy." Then he answered, "What shall I call out?" The voice answered, "All humanity is as frail as grass, and all that makes it attractive, its charm, its loveliness is momentary, like the flower of the field. The grass withers, the flower fades, when the breath of the Lord blows upon it. Most certainly, all the people are like grass. The grass withers, the flower fades, but the word of our God stands forever. O Zion, herald of good news, get up on a high mountain. O Jerusalem, herald of good news, lift up your voice with strength. Lift it up, do not fear. Say to the cities of Judah, here is your God. Listen carefully, the Lord God will come with might, and his arm will rule for him. Most certainly his reward is with him, and his restitution accompanies him. He will protect his flock like a shepherd. He will gather the lambs in his arm. He will carry them in his bosom. He will gently and carefully lead those nursing their young. Who has measured the waters in the hollow of his hand, and marked off the heavens with a span of the hand, and calculated the dust of the earth with a measure, and weighed the mountains in a balance and the hills in a pair of scales? Who has directed the Spirit of the Lord, or has taught him as his counselor? With whom did he consult, and who enlightened him? Who taught him the path of justice, and taught him knowledge, and informed him of the way of understanding? In fact, the nations are like a drop from a bucket, and are regarded as a speck of dust on the scales. Now look, he lifts up the islands like fine dust. And the forests of Lebanon cannot supply sufficient fuel to start a fire, nor are its wild beasts enough for a burnt offering worthy of the Lord. All the nations are as nothing before him. They are regarded by him as less than nothing and meaningless. To whom then will you liken God? Or with what likeness will you compare him? As for the cast image, idol, a metalworker casts it, a goldsmith overlays it with gold, and a silversmith casts its silver chains. He who is too impoverished for such an offering, to give to his God, chooses a tree that will not rot. He seeks out for himself a skillful craftsman to carve and set up an idol that will not totter. Do you, who worship idols, not know? Have you not heard? Has it not been told to you from the beginning? Have you not understood from the foundations of the earth the omnipotence of God and the stupidity of bowing to idols? It is he who sits above the circle of the earth, and its inhabitants are like grasshoppers. It is he who stretches out the heavens like a veil and spreads them out like a tent to dwell in. It is he who reduces dignitaries to nothing, who makes the judges rulers of the earth meaningless, useless. Scarcely have they been planted, scarcely have they been sown, scarcely has their stock taken root in the earth, but he merely blows on them, and they wither, and a strong wind carries them away like stubble. To whom then will you compare me that I would be his equal? Says the Holy One. Lift up your eyes on high and see who has created these heavenly bodies, the one who brings out their host by number. He calls them all by name, because of the greatness of his might and the strength of his power, not one is missing. The Brit Hadasha reading. This week's Brit Hadasha readings are Matthew chapter 23 verses 31 through 39 and Mark chapter 12 verses 28 through 34. They will be read in the Passion Translation and the Amplified. Matthew chapter 23 verses 31 through 39. The Passion Translation. But your words and deeds testify that you are just like them and prove that you are indeed the descendants of those who murdered the prophets. Go ahead and finish what your ancestors started. You are nothing but snakes in the grass, the offspring of poisonous vipers. How will you escape the judgment of hell if you refuse to turn in repentance? For this reason I will send you more prophets and wise men and teachers of truth. Some you will crucify, and some you will beat mercilessly with whips in your meeting houses, abusing and persecuting them from city to city. As your penalty, you will be held responsible for the righteous blood spilled and the murders of every godly person throughout your history, from the blood of righteous Abel to the blood of Zechariah, son of Jehoiada, whom you killed as he stood in the temple between the brazen altar and the holy place. I tell you the truth. The judgment for all these things will fall upon this generation. O Jerusalem, Jerusalem, you are the city that murders your prophets. You are the city that stones the very messengers who were sent to deliver you. So many times I have longed to gather a wayward people, as a hen gathers her chicks under her wings, but you were too stubborn to let me. And now it is too late, since your city will be left in ruins. For you will not see me again until you are able to say, we welcome the one who comes to us in the name of the Lord. Matthew chapter 23 verses 31 through 39. The Amplified Bible. So you testify against yourselves that you are the descendants of those who murdered the prophets. Fill up, then, the allotted measure of the guilt of your fathers' sins. You serpents, you spawn of vipers. How can you escape the penalty of hell? Therefore, take notice, I am sending you prophets and wise men, interpreters, teachers and scribes, men educated in the Mosaic law and the writings of the prophets. Some of them you will kill and even crucify, and some you will flog in your synagogues, and pursue and persecute from city to city, so that on you will come the guilt of all the blood of the righteous shed on earth, from the blood of righteous Abel to the blood of Zechariah, the priest, the son of Berechiah, whom you murdered, between the temple and the altar. I assure you and most solemnly say to you, the judgment for all these things, these vile and murderous deeds, will come on this generation. O Jerusalem, Jerusalem, who murders the prophets and stones to death those messengers who are sent to her by God. How often I wanted to gather your children together around me, as a hen gathers her chicks under her wings, and you were unwilling. Listen carefully. Your house is being left to you desolate, completely abandoned by God and destitute of his protection. For I say to you, you will not see me again, ministering to you publicly until you say, blessed, to be celebrated with praise as he who comes in the name of the Lord. Mark chapter 12 verses 28 through 34. The Passion Translation. Now a certain religious scholar overheard them debating. When he saw how beautifully Jesus answered all their questions, he posed one of his own, and asked him, Teacher, which commandment is the greatest of all? Jesus answered him, the most important of all the commandments is this: the Lord Yahweh our God is one. You are to love the Lord Yahweh your God with a passionate heart, from the depths of your soul, with your every thought, and with all your strength. This is the great and supreme commandment. And the second is this: you must love your neighbor in the same way you love yourself. You will never find a greater commandment than these. The religious scholar replied, Yes, that's true, teacher. You spoke beautifully when you said that God is one, and there is no one else besides him. And there is something more important to God than all the sacrifices and burnt offerings. It's the commandment to constantly love God with every passion of your heart, with your every thought, and with all your strength, and to love your neighbor in the same way as you love yourself. When Jesus noticed how thoughtfully and sincerely the man answered, he said to him, You're not far from the reality of God's kingdom. After that, no one dared to question him again. Mark chapter 12 verses 28 through 34. The Amplified Bible. Then one of the scribes, an expert in Mosaic law, came up and listened to them arguing with one another, and noticing that Jesus answered them well, asked him, Which commandment is first and most important of all? Jesus answered, The first and most important one is, Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one Lord, and you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, life, and with all your mind, thought, understanding, and with all your strength. This is the second. You shall unselfishly love your neighbor as yourself. There is no other commandment greater than these. The scribe said to him, Admirably answered, teacher. You truthfully stated that he is one, and there is no other but him. And to love him with all the heart and with all the understanding and with all the strength, and to unselfishly love one's neighbor as oneself, is much more than all burnt offerings and sacrifices. When Jesus saw that he answered thoughtfully and intelligently, he said to him, You are not far from the kingdom of God. And after that, no one would dare to ask him any more questions.